Hello and welcome to Cut the Reveal, the show where we talk about filmmaking, editing, and things that are relevant to filmmakers, editors, and so on. And I'm Piotr, and this is my co-host, Ricardo. Welcome, Ricky.
Hey, I'm Ricardo. I'm Ricky. I'm both of them. Hi, everybody. Erwann is not again joining with us because he is on vacation.
Yeah.
I think he's just actually secretly competing in the Paris Olympics, but
You think so?
that's just between us.
What sport?
I've heard that he plays basketball, or he played basketball for fun. So let's just say that he's on the French basketball team.
I think it might be sumo. How about sumo? Maybe sumo.
There's a sumo event, or he may be into the sumo events. He probably is on the French sumo wrestling team.
I think so. Yeah. By the way, there is like a great show on Netflix. At least I like it. I like it a lot. It's called Sanctuary. It's about like sumo wrestlers, but it's very good. And it was like surprising to me because it turns out that like not only like big people train sumo, right? Sometimes like you've got like those skinny, almost skinny people, almost also being part of the dojo. I don't know. I don't know what's the word for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Huh. I'll have to look into that.
I think it's a detailed representation of what it's like to train sumo, and that's hard.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. That's hard. Okay.
Okay, this is a sports drama. All right, I just looked it up.
Okay, so what are we talking about today? I mean, I know what we're talking about today, but I want you to tell everyone.
Today, everybody, we are talking about hacks for productive editing sessions. And Peter has created a list of 8 things that will help you be productive in your editing sessions. And you might find that you already do these things. And if you do, good on you. And then you also might learn some stuff today. So let's just get into it. So do you want to introduce the first one, or do you want me to do it, Peter?
Let's shuffle it. You go first.
We'll shuffle it. All right. The number one hack for productive editing sessions is the working environment does matter. So that's where you work, your office, whatever. Maybe you work in a cafe or whatnot. Regardless, the space that you work in directly affects how you work. So that space should be clean, hopefully, and by that we mean both physically and digitally. So like you got a clean desk, you're not surrounded by boxes like I am currently and garbage and other things. But also like if your desktop on the computer actually has not a lot of files on it, or like mine is pitiful because it is full of screenshots, which I need to go through and delete. But also, just getting rid of clutter physically and digitally really helps your mind space. We'll say your frame of mind, how you see things. You can see things more clearly. You're not focusing on all this detritus all around you. And also like ventilating your room. So getting fresh air into your room also, that helps a lot too. So that's number one. Right now, I can tell you right now, as I've just said, my workspace is a total disaster.
But you're excused.
Yeah, I mean, I just moved into a home, so whatever. It's much better than a couple of weeks ago, so that's good, and it's getting better. But it could definitely be better.
It's also about the fact that like the more messy your environment is, the more area for mistake. Kind of like, for example, like it's as simple as that. Also, it's practical in a way, because like if you've got things in your desk, something might spill, for example, on a keyboard or whatever, right? If you've got very messy desktop on your computer, the software, the OS might run a little bit slower, and might be more potent for crashes and so on. Also, if you've got a lot of games installed on the same system you're working on your edits, there's all of these things are not good for streamlining the editing process, because they are a potential source of trouble basically for you.
Right.
Yeah, so that's also as simple as that. All of the things that you've mentioned, but also the practical aspect to it is just important. And also, like, I think that when someone is not doing fine, right, the first thing that very often someone will with experience, like a psychologist or someone like that will tell such a person, is that like start with cleaning your room, right? That's the first thing very often, because like cleaning the things around you helps with just getting things in the right order, I guess.
Yeah, agreed. And definitely like that state of mind.
Yeah.
It's something that isn't in your peripheral. That's kind of even peripherally speaking, visually, but also something that you're thinking about. Um, it just helps streamline the way that you're able to focus on the work and be more productive and be more efficient and be more effective in your sessions. And that kind of goes right into number two.
Number two, distractions are things you haven't planned for. And what do I mean by that? Like, the question is like, is Netflix a waste of time? Is like Facebook a waste of time? Is Instagram a waste of time? Is like playing with your kids a waste of time? Like, I think the answer is obvious to that. Those things are not necessarily waste of time, but they're a waste of time when they are not planned for and they're not like expected. So when you're just like grabbing the phone to call someone, but then you end up scrolling through Instagram feed for an hour, right? That's a huge waste of time. But if
Yeah.
instead you've got lunch at 1 p.m., let's say, right? And you decide, once I eat my lunch, I've got 10 minutes to go through my social media before I get back to work. It's not a waste of time if you do it this way. If you plan it, like if you like do it consciously and not as a result of like being caught in the loop.
Instagram is terrible, and it's something that pulls me. It's like a reflex picking it up in the same way that you said, like, oh, you're going to make a call, and then, oh, I'll automatically click on Instagram or some social media and then just go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not saying like I've put that list together, but it doesn't mean I don't do that. I do it sometimes. My way of dealing with it is that once I notice I do it too often, I uninstall Instagram for some time. That's how I deal with it usually. It's good to be, like think about it consciously, that's for sure.
Usually, how I combat that during work is I take my phone and I put it out of arm's reach.
Yes.
So I put it behind me somewhere. And then if I hear a buzz, then it's an effort to like try and go and look at it. And hopefully I'm strong enough not to go and look at it, because then if I pick it up, then I'm like, oh, what's this? What's this? But it's definitely better than it used to be.
And it's actually exactly what we're talking about with number three, mise en place.
Mise en place is a French phrase for putting things in place. So develop a repetitive routine for starting your edit session and reset it every time you stop. So that's kind of like,
Putting the phone away, that's exactly it. That's one of the things that you could include in your mise en place, in your preparation before editing, right? Like the list of things you do before you sit down to edit. Like one of the things, put your phone away, right? And that's a great example of mise en place. Another example could be like have water prepared somewhere nearby, right? In a bottle or whatever, right? Bottle.
the same way as like for me, like I make the bed every morning because that's like the first thing I do. And then my routine is then to work out, then I eat, then I sit down to work. So those things help me have a more productive and better day mentally and kind of physically as well. So, number 4, visualize. This was something that when I first heard about this, made sense, but also not something that I ever thought of, because whenever I think of like visualize, I think of more of like a physical aspect of it. And for me, it brings up sports or sport. So like when somebody says, like, I used to skateboard a lot. And so it's best to like visualize when you're like doing the trick. Or even when I train jujitsu, it's like you visualize what you want to do. And eventually you're like kind of in your mind. And in number 4, visualize, it's the same thing. You can edit before you put any clips on the timeline, so you kind of know what the footage is and stuff, and then you can, without having to like physically do it, digitally speaking, you can start putting stuff together. So you kind of consider what the 3-act structure is for like a scene or a film or whatever the project is, and then you just build it from there. So you can kind of like almost, we say visualize, but it's almost like pre-visualizing it before you start getting into it, which I think is, I have started doing, not as often as maybe I could, but it's something that I've started doing and actually is interesting and helps, because it kind of gets those wheels moving and turning in regards to like, okay, how am I going to tackle this scene or this project? What do I need to do? And I'm already like kind of hit the ground running even before I started to, click the mouse.
That's the point. Like, like once you've watched the footage, what are the building blocks, right? And then as you make a cup of coffee or as you take a walk or whatever, you can think about this. Like, what out of that footage that you've seen stands out, and what could be like the conflict that you create from that footage? What's the most interesting thing about it, and so on? Like, there are multiple questions that you can ask yourself to help with that visualizing process. But you can kind of like decide on what's the order, in a way, like not specifically this clip after this clip, but like but logically what comes after, what comes next, basically, right? What comes next, you can decide on that, like what's the first thing, what comes next, and so on, right?
You're kind of mapping out
Yeah,
what
exactly.
you're going to be doing, and then it's kind of a loose roadmap. Because obviously, well, at least for me, I'm not very lucid in my thoughts, so I can't like visualize something and it's like super stark or very strong in my mind. Like I can get a loose idea of what I want to do, and then obviously the reality of what the footage is and stuff is hits you once you start editing and whatever. But I have a good idea of what I'm doing, and so that helps. And if you're not doing the visualizing, you should start trying to do it, because I guarantee that you'll get something out of it. So number 5.
Number five is the thing that I kind of I'm kind of proud of it, because like I learned later, once I started using it, that it's actually a concept that productivity gurus, which I'm not, but productivity gurus, like they teach it with like different framing, and they don't call it this way, but that's exactly what they teach. And I actually stumbled upon this listening to some podcast about Ernest Hemingway. I think it was a podcast. At least I was like learning about Ernest Hemingway for some reason. And they said that like Hemingway used to stop writing once he knew what would be the next paragraph. And I thought, what? Why? How does it make any sense? Like, if you know what's coming, like what's the next paragraph, you write it down, right? That's what I do in the editing. I always like, once I know the next edit, I will just do it. And once I hit the wall, then I stop and leave. And the next day, exactly. What's the next day? The next day, I'm gonna struggle with starting the editing session. And that's the whole concept. The Hemingway rule is about stopping before you, once you know what follows, so that the next day or the next time you sit to edit, it's easier to get things going, and it's easier to basically do something, right? Because like we all know, and I think we all experience it, that like starting something is the most difficult task. Once you
Yeah.
have the ball rolling, it's much easier to make decision after a decision, and so on and so on. And as editors, we make a lot of decisions, right? So if you leave yourself something that you already know what follows, you know how to do it, it's easier to start the day, basically, right? And it can have many forms. And the most beautiful thing about this is that you can start doing it right away. You doesn't need to practice, really. And it could be like one of the things that I do sometimes is that I will leave myself like, if I let's say I have like 2 hours of interviews, right? I will listen to like 1 hour and 50 minutes, and then I will stop instead of listening all the way through. And the next morning, or once I sit by the computer again, I have 10 minutes left, but I know what they're talking about, and so on already, right? So it's easier to start this way. Like, if I would listen to till the end, next I have to think, okay, now decision time, like what's the structure, what's gonna come next, and so on, right?
Mhm.
But when I leave myself those 10 minutes, it's much easier to start, basically, right? Another example would be that, let's say I do listen to all of it, and I already start to put things on the timeline, right? So I can decide, once I figure out basically what's the intro, what's the hook, what's the conflict, once I figure out something, then I can stop again, right? And when I come back to my computer again, I can redo it to what I already thought in my mind, what's already kind of created in my mind, but not on the timeline just yet. And that way of thinking, that way of planning your edits, in a way, helps you with getting the ball rolling. Yeah, that's the whole concept. Hemingway rule.
For me, I think it when you leave something incomplete, but you know what the next step is, it kind of helps you. Like you said, like you have an idea what's going, but I think psychologically speaking, other than like the ease of that, knowing that you have something that it's not like a block of like, okay, I've got to start over again. But it's also kind of inspiring because you're like, oh, I know exactly what I want to do and I want to get back to it. And then that makes you focus more on the task at hand. And you're also looking at things from, especially what you said in regards to like interviews and what to do next. Like if you are watching 2 hours of interviews, then you're expecting to like have, after watching or sifting through footage for 2 hours, my brain is mush. Like I'm always wanting to take a nap. But then if you leave that 10 minutes, you got a fresh brain that then like, okay, now this is going to be easier to think about what I need to do next and whatever. And so that's obviously a huge benefit also to that, is that just that fresh thinking, you're coming at it and you're not so fatigued by everything that you've been doing.
Exactly. Okay, so number 6.
Number 6, pre-commitments can be more powerful than deadlines. Find out what rules you can put on yourself that will keep you accountable. So I would translate this to like, even though it says more powerful than deadlines, is kind of milestones, we'll say, rather than like, okay, this is everything has to be done in the next 2 weeks. This is like, I'm going to finish watching all of the interviews at this time. And then the next thing is this is the next task. And then this is the next task. And it makes kind of, we'll use the elephant analogy. Instead of trying to eat that whole elephant at once, you're taking little bites to get through it. And then it makes it much more, makes it easier to understand what you're doing and to not be so stressed about how big of a workload you might have.
Yeah. That's a very good point. My thinking about pre-commitments and what I meant with it is a little bit different, because it's about like setting rules for yourself instead of like just like hard deadlines from your client or whatever, right? You can also like create a rule for yourself that can be more powerful. That's and let me give you an example so that it's more clear. For example, you've got something you want to buy. You want the thing. It's not something you need right now, but you want it. And you've got this big project going on that you really care about, right? You really want this thing to be good. Let's say it's a short film you edit for a director or whatever, right? You can do some kind of like, you can create a pre-commitment for yourself that once you finish editing that thing, you will be able to buy it. Once you finish, then you buy it, basically. Something like that. Another one could be that you pre-commit in front of someone who cares about you, like your spouse or whatever, right? You tell them that like, I need to get this thing going. I need to have this thing ready by this time. If I don't, then you're allowed to do this and this. I don't know, something that like, or I take you to like Michelin restaurant or whatever, right? Like something that like creates fake urgency in a way that wouldn't be in place otherwise, but you put a rule on yourself to help with motivation and so on. It will not install motivation like necessarily, right? Because that's not about that. Like motivation has to be there before, but it helps you to act and to not
Procrastinate?
procrastinate. Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah, these are just tools of accountability.
Yeah, exactly.
So rather than, like you said, sometimes creating your own deadlines can be a little bit more important than like a client's deadline. It means more, it's more personal. Like, especially if accountability, where you're like, you tell your spouse, hey, I want to get this done by this time. And then if I don't, then I have to spend all this money on you or something. Or, like, yeah, buy you a new dress, or is something to like hold you to it, that it's not just, and these are things that you would also, these pre-commitments would be inspiring for you, and that you would get something more out of it rather than just like, I'm making my client happy. It's something that would directly be beneficial for yourself, either physically or mentally. So it makes those stakes a little bit higher and makes you more motivated to reach those, I guess, pre-commitment deadlines.
Yeah, it could be accountability to a group as well, right? If you're part of the group, then like making it clear you're the one who will do it if there is a task at hand, right? It's also a pre-commitment in a way. It's not like something that is thrown upon you. It's something that you throw upon yourself. And I think that's the difference between deadlines and pre-commitments. Deadlines are external, they're put on you, and pre-commitment is something you bring on yourself to punish yourself or whatever. No, I'm kidding, but like, to help you.
It gives you more control.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, number 7.
Number 7 is about constraints. It's not my sentence. I borrowed it from a TED talk, I think. Is constraints are not boundaries, but rather a source, a foundation of creativity. When you feel overwhelmed, limit your choices deliberately. I paraphrased it in a little bit. One of the examples for editors, you could limit yourself to simple cuts. That's one of the things that, like, I think beginner editors, people who are quite new to editing, let's call it this way, they do it, like, for example, for a year or two. They don't have like a lot of experience. They are often they are tempted to use like big transitions, dynamic things, and so on, things to spice the edits, right? But actually very often limiting themselves is actually more productive, and can help them with their creativity more, because they're not focused on what could be out on top of that. Like, out of all of the things I can do, like, we've got these plugins, these presets, and so on, what can I do more? Instead of that thinking, you've got, okay, I only can do simple cuts, that's it, I can't do anything else. So what do I do?
Right.
Right? What's the choice out of that? Like, I've got these clips, I can only make simple cuts. What do I do? What's my choice in this case? The focus changes, and then you actually then you focus on something specific, on a specific area of creativity in a way, and very often it will actually spark new ideas that wouldn't be there otherwise. And that's the idea, but behind this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about this before with Erwann in our episode, Erwann and Ricardo, Excellent Adventure.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing. The idea that, when you have a very specific idea, it's easier to focus on that. And my analogy would be like looking for a movie on Netflix or any streaming platform. It's just like too much, and you're just sitting there spinning your wheels like, what do I want? And then after like an hour, you're like, I haven't watched anything. I've just been sifting through stuff. But constraining yourself. And I think that this also, especially with clients and directors, having somebody say, just do whatever you want isn't helpful.
Isn't helpful at all.
Uh,
Exactly.
so like when they're like, this is kind of the idea that I want. Can you do that? Then that helps you focus what you're doing. And then you are, that's how that makes it easier, rather than like, well, now I've got all these different roads that I can go down. Which one do I go down? And then you start, at least with me, I start being like, well, is this the right road? Is this the right way that we want to go? Or do I want to do this and stuff? And so in that sense, it helps you to, those boundaries help your creativity, help your focus, and help your productivity in that way. Then, because you're not spinning your wheels trying to figure out like, well, what's the best idea?
That's a very good analogy. Yeah. If you like, coming back to that, like choosing a movie, right? You could decide that you will choose a movie by a certain director, and then it gets so much easier, right? Rather than like going through the whole library of things. So yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah. Number 8, keep a backlog of edits you love. Build the system around saving such notes, and you will never lack ideas again. I do not do this, so maybe you can talk about this.
The idea is that you create some kind of system for saving things that like stood up to you and that you love, basically, right? For example, when I watched Tiger King on Netflix a few years back, right? There was the ending of the second episode, I think, on that woman who was like his nemesis of Tiger King, right? And we've got a shot with like voiceover, and they basically, what they did is they just showed her looking into the barrel into the lens, and they stayed on that shot for the ending with the voiceover for like 30 or 40 seconds, like a very long shot. And I loved it. I think it created so much more suspension. They could like create some kind of visual montage of things that are talked about in the voiceover. But no, instead they chose to focus on her eyes and just like very slowly zooming in to her face, I thought it created so much suspension, and I thought it would be great to reuse it someday on a project that I work on.
Suspense.
Yeah, this suspense aspect of like, just using one shot. So I basically took out my phone and took the picture of the screen, and just added it to like a note taken up, right? And that's it. Nothing else. You could say like, okay, that's not very elegant, but the thing is, yeah, it's not elegant, but it's easy, right? Because I've put it in one place, so it's in a note taken up, and I had like a label I would put to it, right? So two things: take a picture, add the label to it, so that it's easier to find it later, right? And it just makes it easy. If instead I would have a system where I have to write the title of the thing, I have to write the time code to that moment, I would have to describe what I like about it, and so on. That's a high threshold. It would be great to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be. It would be great to do it, but it's a high threshold. So you're less likely to actually do it when the inspiration strikes, when you feel compelled by something, right? But if it's just taking your phone, taking a picture, and pressing on a label on the in the app, it's easy, and you can reuse it. You can open the app later on in the future when you're struggling with creative choice on something, and you can potentially find something that would be a perfect inspiration for a moment you're working on. So that's the whole idea. Like, have a backlog of ideas that you create that are based on your responses to the content that you watch, that you listen to, that you read, and so on.
Yeah. So it's essentially like a mood board.
Yeah.
Like these are the things that inspire you in your work as an editor. Let us know if any of these hacks you already do, or these are new to you. Or, I mean, call us crazy, or even add to them if there's things that you do that you think are pretty cool and help you a lot and would help others. So there's always contact information in our description. So
Yeah, by the way, like, these are like summaries of like a productivity module from my course, The Editing Chef, right? Pretty much there are like one sentence summaries, right? That we just like discussed and talked about. But obviously those are like big concepts. That's what I like. I've put them in the module about productivity. But really, like, that there are number of things you can do in your workflow that are also contributing to editing faster and better, and so on, right? So there is whole module on that in the Editing Chef, of course, as well. But talking about that, I just want to mention that I released a new preset pack. It's called Ultimate Premiere Pro Presets. And it's like a pack of over 200 presets for different purposes. So like, you've got Essential Motion, which are like free presets for adding motion to the clips on the timeline. In Ultimate Presets, you've got different types. You've got also Extended Motion pack preset in it, which is basically like Essential Motion, but like a bigger brother of Essential Motion in a way.
mm-hmm.
More complicated movements and so on, more movements and so on, right? But also different types, like, for example, metadata overlays presets, track height presets, and so on. Like, all of these places in Premiere where you can have presets, I basically put them into this pack, Ultimate Presets, in Premiere Pro, right? So if that's something you're interested in, check out the video on my channel on Cut to the Point, or just the description of this episode.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description so you can click on it and see what we're talking about.
So, sponsored by Ultimate Presets.
Those are the hacks we had talked about, and then ultimate presets. You got to get it. I have them, and they're pretty awesome. They're the ultimate, so definitely get into
The
that.
ultimate, exactly.
They're the ultimate. I mean, ultimate is better than pretty much everything. So unless it's super ultimate, and then that may be the next pack. But
Exactly.
anyway, so initially when we first started coming back to this podcast, we were playing with, okay, how are we going to record this podcast? I think we initially started on Zoom, then we were going with Riverside, and then Adobe created their own thing, so Adobe Podcast. And so we tried a couple episodes with them, and it worked out. But right at that point, it was just kind of like too no frills. Like, It was very, very simple.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
I don't mind that it was simple, but basically, like, there were two things that we didn't like about it, right? The first one is that we couldn't see each other when recording it. So we would like record on Adobe Podcast, but we would also connect via Google Meet or something else to see each other when we talk. And the other one is that once the recording is over, you only have like a mix down track. You don't have separate tracks for speakers, and that sucks. It allows you like it allows for it doesn't allow you to edit it properly, basically, right? So I messaged Adobe Podcast about this and mentioned it, and that's what they replied. They said, your request to have separate tracks for each speaker is valuable feedback and will help shape this product going forward. So my take is that probably they will incorporate it in Adobe Podcast. I hope they
they
will.
should. I don't know why they don't already have it.
Exactly. And the second one is your second point about being able to see your guest while recording. We're working on this feature and we'll soon have it. So that's great. They're already working on it. So those are like, once they do those two things, we might switch back to Adobe Podcast at least for one episode to see if it's any better.
Unrelated to any of that, Yellow Ticket is screening in Verona, Italy.
Actually, it already was screening there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's, if you don't know, it's my short film, and yeah, it's kind of the first festival selection for it, and yeah, it was screening in Verona, at the Bridge Film Festival, which was 11th edition of this festival, I believe. And Yellow Ticket has like endorsement from IDS, International Dostoevsky Society, and the president of IDS is from Verona, so he was there. He was there to see it. He said it was a great experience, basically. And like the selection of films overall was very good. So I'm just glad to have Yellow Ticket amongst other great films out there.
Cool. Did you get any pictures of it, like Yellow Ticket on the
Yeah,
screen or
a
anything?
few
You did?
pictures of
Oh, that's great. Good for you.
Okay, and I guess the last thing that we want to talk about in this episode is the new segmentation model from Meta. What do I mean by that? Basically, Meta released new AI model for rotoscoping and tracking things. Imagine you have a video, and it could be even a complicated video of something moving within a frame, and basically you just click on that object, and whole rotoscoping and tracking of that object is done automatically for you. And you might say, like, okay, we had that before with Runway, for example, and also After Effects has it at this point to a great extent. Like, I mean, rotoscoping in 2.0 in After Effects is a huge step forward from the original rotoscoping feature. But it looks like this new thing from Meta is actually on a different level. Like, it might be like, I tried automatic rotoscoping on the Runway almost a year ago, so it's probably better now, but still, like, when I tried it then, it wasn't very good, and it only worked for like very simple backgrounds and so on. With this new thing from Meta, it looks like it will work even for complicated images because it understands what you're clicking on. So if there is a dog and you click on the dog, it knows that it's a dog. It doesn't just rely on like the contrast of the pixels around the thing, and and so on. It knows it's a dog, so it applies everything that is needed to rotoscope it well. And the thing is that they release it as like almost like an open source. I mean, the technical term is a patch 2.0 license, which we're not technical, so we don't know exactly what it means. But
Right.
yeah, but as far as we understand, and we asked AI about it, it basically allows companies to freely use it for their products, to build like interface around it, and to modify it even.
Yeah.
So I can see, like, many companies using that for their products, and probably Runway and so on. If it's really that much better, we'll see it implemented in After Effects, Runway, and so on. I believe. So yeah, it's something that is important for us editors when it comes to development of those AI tools.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a game changer in regards to like rotoscoping and independent type stuff that, or I mean, anybody who does motion graphics or any visual effects, either professionally or, on their own time. This is definitely a game changer, makes things easier. With the threat, AI being a threat to like people's jobs, I think that something like this isn't a threat to anybody.
It is in a way, Ricky. Like it always is, because like
How? I mean,
I'll tell you
you
how.
still need somebody to press the button.
Yeah, but I'll tell you how. Like it means that you need less people.
Right, but you're not going to have a team of rotoscopers.
We do. I can't remember exact title, but I believe there was a film where they had like 20 people rotoscoping for like months and months. Seriously, I think it's actually the Polish film, Peasants. It was nominated to an Oscar, I believe. And Peasants, it's like it had a team of rotoscoper of people who rotoscoped for like months. Seriously. So something like this means less money for people who know how to do it well. And it's not an easy task, actually.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, then it can be like who gets hired to do the rotoscoping and how much they're getting paid. And that in the same sense of like, you're going to have people in, we'll say in America do it, or you're going to pay people half the price in India to do the same thing. So then with AI, obviously you're going to cut all those people out.
Exactly.
But, obviously however big it is, and it all will depend on, you've mentioned this before, I think, in one of our previous episodes. I think that actually the episode with Steve Holfish, in regards to it boils down to economics, whether people want to do it or not. And this thing from Meta, not a sponsor, SAM2 as they're calling it, just based on the examples that we're seeing, it's really, really good, but it's definitely not perfect. And so there will be a time when it comes to that. But yeah.
And I think the takeaway from that is that if you're someone who knows how to rotoscope well, get familiar with it. Because if you will be able to use it quickly and refine its results so that it's perfect, you will be the one who will be picked to do, next jobs. Yeah. So, yeah, if you're faster and you're better and you know how to refine it well, you're the one who will be valuable in the marketplace. So, yeah, even though it might mean that like less people will be rotoscoping, it also means that you can be on top of that with knowing those tools. And actually, like, rotoscoping is not very sexy job.
It sucks.
Yeah, I when I was working in the post production house, I was doing some rotoscoping as well sometimes to help another person who was doing it more often than I. It's not easy. It's a very
monotonous. Yeah, it's a monotonous job.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're doing it old fashioned, I don't know, previous way, definitely need a good record to listen to or a good book to listen to, because it's going to take hours and hours. So in that sense, I think that this is awesome in that, and anybody can do it. That's like the thing, is like we get anybody to do it, then they can bring somebody in. But also if you're good at it, wrangling in, however this SAM2 becomes, whether it becomes SAM3, 4, whatever, and the way that it evolves to become better and better, you're still going to need somebody who understands it, and how it works.
Exactly.
And like you said, that's like an unfair advantage to you to get the jobs of rotoscoping or whatnot. But anyway, as usual, everybody, there will be links in the description of the things that we talked about, as well as you can find contact information for us and our social media stuff in case you want to reach out to us. We really would like to hear from you regardless of what you have to say. So please get into that. Let us know what you think.
Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye.